Much as I'd love to, this channel is now an Indian action movie appreciation channel.
That's true. I forgot. Kate Bush needs to go on hold.
Sorry. Welcome to Electric Enthusiasm, the podcast where we celebrate unironic enthusiasm. Today, I really wish I was in black and white. I'm Alexander Kjolf.
Nice. And I am a purveyor of vintage film bullshit, Katie Cobalt.
In addition to random art school bullshit,
Oh yeah, it's great.
which
It's
we
very
talked
fun.
about in the last
It's the
episode.
same thing, actually. It's not different.
Oh, that's great. So, Katie, can you tell us how this podcast works?
In each episode, one of us presents a topic that they love, but the other knows little to nothing about. And then they try their level best to spread that enthusiasm to the other host and to you, the listener. Sometimes we have guests on, like hopefully next episode, who are super excited about something we know nearly nothing about.
There is also the moment of meta where we nerd out about enthusiasm itself, talk a little about why it matters and how you can live a more enthusiastic life.
Because we think this world needs more enthusiasm, and you can share yours with us on our website, electricenthusiasm.com, or on our Instagram at electricenthusiasm. Tell us what you're excited about these days, or you can even plain old send us an email at hello@electricenthusiasm.com.
What the hell are we talking about in this episode, Katie?
In this episode, we are talking about M. Do you know what that is?
Well, since you did bring it up in our last episode very briefly and said you were going to do an episode, I do know what it is. Do you want to hear what I know about it?
Yes, I'm curious.
It's a movie.
That's it? That's all you got?
I know Fritz Lang. I know the name Fritz Lang, and that's about it. Very influential filmmaker from back in the 30s, I want to say 30s?
Yep. 30.
So black and white movies. I know he made Metropolis as well,
Yes, he did.
but I have not seen M and I have not seen Metropolis, so that's what I know.
That is more than most. I'll give you that. So, we like to start with the facts first here on the podcast.
Yeah, we do.
So, M is a film, like you said, from the 1930s. It is directed by Fritz Lang, who is a name that I think a lot of people know. We will talk a little bit more about why Fritz Lang is a complete fucking badass in a moment. But this particular film, he called himself his magnum opus. And in my personal opinion, is the best Fritz Lang film. I'm biased. It stars Peter Lorre in his breakout role as Hans Beckert. The plot is an early example of a procedural drama or a crime thriller. It follows a story of a serial killer of children. And it kind of follows the town kind of tearing itself apart, trying to find out who the killer is. Both the police and the criminal underworld are hunting him down. You have this comparison between how the police are trying to hunt this person down versus the criminal underworld. When he's finally caught, you have the contrast between the kangaroo court when like the criminals catch him versus the official court when he gets taken away by the police, and how those two kind of play out and how different mob mentalities play out when it comes to, a guy who murders children.
So basically a feel-good film.
Oh yeah, it's so squishy
Yeah.
marshmallows.
Yeah, exactly. Sounds great. Also, a lot of those themes are kind of relevant these days, right?
It's a deeply relevant film at all times, I think. So this is
Wow.
actually Peter Lorre's first film. He was 26 when this came out, which is crazy. His performance in this film is chef's kiss. He's going to go on to work with Alfred Hitchcock in The Man Who Knew Too Much in 1934, Casablanca in 42. He does also get a big black mark next to his name from me because he does some yellowface in 1937 as Mr. Moto in Thank You, Mr. Moto. Oh, this is not the only mention of a white person being an asshole in this episode.
Right.
The film itself was written by Fritz Lang and his wife, Thea von Harbo. They were longtime collaborators, and this is a genre-breaking film. So it is often hailed as being a German expressionism film. So the hallmarks of German expressionism, really insanely intricate stylistic sets, like sets where the floor has a black and white painted swirl on it, the houses are at crooked angles and really narrow, and often very painterly. The makeup is often quite intense, really taking advantage of the black and white nature of film at the time. So an example of this would be The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. If you've seen that, I'm very
I have
impressed.
not.
No one's seen it. It's only film students like myself have seen it. And another thing that kind of like makes a film a German expressionism film is really dramatic use of light and shadow, and using
Mhm.
shadows, particularly long silhouettes, to create a really ominous effect.
I have not seen The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, but it just turned up in a movie I watched last week.
Did it?
It turned up in, believe it or not, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. It's a comedy action movie where Nicolas Cage plays himself.
Oh, okay. That sounds like something Nicolas Cage would do.
Yes. Basically, he's now washed up in his career, and he gets a gig to go attend a birthday party as a guest.
Oh, wow.
And the guy who's throwing the party may turn out to be a mobster. Yeah, and then they talk about their favorite movies, and his two favorite movies are The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and Paddington 2.
I cannot think of two more films more opposite on any given spectrum in the world.
No, no, right.
Yeah.
So, weird coincidence that you'd mentioned that. So, and also crazy camera angles is
Yes,
also like a hallmark of that school of cinema, right?
exactly.
From,
Yeah.
crooked from above or below, or was that Dutch? Okay.
Yes, it is another hallmark of this, and this is something that actually does happen to a certain extent in M. So there are things that M does pull from German expressionism,
Hmm.
particularly the use of light and shadow, and some
Hmm.
of the set design in M is very geometric, and there's lots of
Hmm.
repeating shapes. Like you have a shot down a stairwell, which gives the energy of German expressionism without being as stylized. So
Right.
some people argue that this film is like a transitional film in terms of genre because it takes these elements of German expressionism and kind of like makes it less intense and less terrifying, and then kind of gives it this crime element, which all of a sudden makes it feel like the first film noir film. Ooh, the first film
Ah.
noir film is a weird fucking sentence.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Was it shot in America? Was it like a Hollywood movie or
No, it's a German film.
okay.
It
And
was
shot
still
in German?
everything. Yeah, it's a German film. I understand that the bar to entry on this film for most Westerners is very high because it's both black and white and in
Uh-huh.
German.
So
So
Peter Lorre was German or he spoke German or
he was a Hungarian, but from the part of Hungary that's now Slovakia, I believe.
huh?
He spoke German. He also speaks English. In this film, he speaks German. Everyone speaks German.
Okay, got it.
There's not a huge amount of dialogue, to be fair, not until the end.
Okay, interesting. So, Katie, why are we talking about M of all of the movies in all of the world?
So, this is where my past as a film student comes in. I have watched a lot of classic cinema throughout my life, from Citizen Kane to The Bicycle Thief to Battleship Potemkin. When it comes to those really obnoxious, how cultured are you? Have you seen these films? I do very fucking well in those tests. But I can safely tell you, I have enjoyed very few of them.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
watched
yeah.
them because someone made me. But
Mhm.
M is genuinely good. M is genuinely a good film to watch. Like, it's the only film from film school I have watched again since leaving film school.
Wow. Wow.
Um,
Okay.
so kind of like Citizen Kane, it's where a lot of the classic tropes of cinema comes from. It's where a lot of the things that we take for granted now first happened, which is super fucking cool. Once you start notice that's a thing that no one's ever done before and this guy did it and it's kind of awesome, but also the story and the use of philosophy and the questions that are being asked in this film, when you know the context of when this film was made, it's deeply enjoyable and genuinely a good film, and is also on YouTube, so you can just watch it.
I
Except
am
some of
absolutely
the
going to
content
watch
is
that
very
very, very soon. I have not seen Battleship Potemkin, but I know of it because
no,
it is used, it is homaged, it is referenced, it is plagiarized in The Untouchables.
that's the thing. So many of these films are referenced throughout like modern day cinema and cinema history because they're just first. They were
Yeah,
first.
yeah. And there's the final shootout scene in The Untouchables takes place on this staircase
Yeah.
in the Chicago train station.
Yeah.
And there are so many elements from the original scene that repeat. Like there's this baby carriage rolling down the stairs.
Yeah.
There are even two sailors walking down the stairs. Yeah, and what are sailors doing in Chicago, right?
They're
not
there
a
to
lot
make a
of
Battleship Potemkin reference. That's what they're there
X.
for.
That's what they're there for. So
Man.
that must be super interesting to actually see where, a lot of this stuff
Yeah,
comes
exactly.
from. Yeah.
I also super like Tim Burton. I was that edgy teenager that loved Tim Burton, and most of Tim Burton's stuff is stolen almost directly from German Expressionism and Fritz Lang, and so it was quite fun for me to be like, "I love Tim Burton. He's so great. Henry Selznick is amazing," and then to watch these films and be like, "Oh,
Uh,
everything is a remix. Cool."
yeah, yeah, yeah. What makes it expressionism? Is that purely the visuals? Because my only reference for expressionism is in art,
Yeah, yeah.
impressionism, expressionism, that kind of thing.
I don't know the answer. I imagine it is just the fact that it's such a stylistic approach to filmmaking.
Yeah,
And I think it might just be due to the fact that it is such a dramatic use of shape and light.
all
And
right.
that feels like expressionism to me. But
Okay.
I didn't go to art school. So I don't know what expressionism means in the art world.
Awesome. Okay.
We have four things that we're going to talk about as why M is such an exciting film to watch, even with modern eyes. So, first things first, I think this is like the iconic reason why. It's number one, the use of sound.
Uh-huh.
So, this is the first film Fritz Lang has ever produced with synchronized sound. All
Okay.
of his other works previously, there would be a silent film playing and then somebody playing piano or
Yeah.
harpsichord or organ or something alongside the cinema because lining up the audio and the dialogue and everything was just too much of a nightmare. So if there were lines, the screen would just cut. There was information on screen and then it would cut back. Remember the moment in Everything Ever All at Once with the rocks and there's just text on screen and you just
Yeah.
read?
Yeah.
And it's up to you as the audience to interpret how to read it, right? There's no actor kind of giving you cues on the emotional state of the character in that moment. You, as the audience, have a lot more control over how you're going to perceive this.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is one of the reasons why having the synchronized sound really changed the game for actors in their ability to portray emotion. Because
Yeah.
now they have the option of like delivering lines with
Yeah.
feelings. Mental, insane. No one knew that was possible.
It's also probably why the acting performances were so exaggerated in the
Mhm.
silent movies, right? The heroine isn't just afraid; she's like, "Stay away from me!" Right? The evil guy isn't just, he's shaking his fist, right?
Yeah, because they didn't have any
Because
other options.
yeah,
The first film with synchronized sound came out in 1927, just 4 years earlier, and it was called The Jazz Singer. And it was a film featuring a shit ton of blackface. The plot of that film is basically a white singer fails at being a singer, so he blacks up and then becomes a jazz singer, and he's really popular. So that film's trash. Great. Awesome. Moving on with our lives.
that is basically the ultimate cultural appropriation, right?
Right. It's so annoying. It's
In
so
in form,
annoying.
in form and content. Wow,
Ah, it's
nice.
so terrible. So, trash film. Moving on with our lives. So basically,
Yeah.
this technology is super duper new. Most people are using it to make musicals, right? And that's
Hmm.
kind of like how people are seeing it. It's dialogue and music is how people at the time are using synchronized sound. Enter Fritz Lang, who, by the way, I found this out. The British Film Institute later went on to dub him the Master of Darkness, which is such a good name.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So he is the first person to use voiceover. That wasn't a thing. And he uses voiceover as a way to help connect shots that would seem disparate and give them the sense of urgency and terror in a way that no one fucking did that before because no one knew they could do that. It's
Wow,
just so cool to think that he just was like, oh yeah, this is how we're going to do things from going forward. Something as simple
wow.
as off screen sound. That was innovative. No one had ever thought to have a sound of something you can't see right away. So, for example, there's a shot of a little girl who is about to be murdered, and she's about to cross the street, and we hear a car horn before we see the car, which one tells us she's in danger, two makes the world beyond the screen exist. So if
Hmm.
you think about it, before this point, there were not options of having sound that existed out of the screen. And so it makes the world feel bigger. It makes you feel like there's a window that you're only seeing a little bit of, and the rest of the world exists outside of the window that you can see. No one had ever done that before. How the fuck did Lang come up with this shit? It's so cool.
Well, partly that, and also partly how did he know it would work? How did he know that audiences would actually be able to register that this is not a car out on the street in front of the movie theater? This is actually a car in the movie, but outside of the screen or the current
Yeah.
shot right now, right? I wonder how he knew that that would work because audiences had not seen that before, and they were not particularly sophisticated.
Well, they hadn't seen
If you,
any
if
other cinema like this before.
no, and remember that people saw King Kong and were afraid that they were actually about to be attacked by King Kong and ran out of the theaters.
What's even funnier is like the one of the first films ever shown in a theater was of a train. And there's a head-on shot of a train coming towards the camera and people ran out the way. Because they didn't
Yeah,
know,
right?
right?
Yeah.
Like, people had never experienced cinema before, and so they didn't know that, "Yeah, it's fine, nothing can hurt you." They were like, "That's a fucking train, I'm getting out of here, what's wrong with you?"
Oh, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. Yeah. Oh, what a visionary.
Right? He also used sound bridges to connect scenes, which is something that we totally take for granted now, where you have two scenes where two characters are talking, and it'll cut from one character in one room giving a speech to some guys, cut mid-sentence to another character finishing his sentence in another room.
Mhm.
That's a really common thing that we see in cinema all the time.
Yeah.
This was the first place it happened.
Wow.
There's a really awesome scene where you're cross-cutting between the criminal overlords and the police. So it's like the leaders of each group are talking to their men about how we're gonna find the guy. There's a map on the table, and like they're lit similarly with this really intense downlighting. And you have that thing where the criminal overlord starts a sentence and the policeman finishes it. And it just show how these
Ah.
two groups are so similar and so different at the same time. Like they can finish each other's sentences, but oh wow, they have very different reasonings and approaches towards how they're going to catch this guy. And
Wow.
like to think of that and to realize that now that I have synchronized sound, I can use it to create that contrast. Oh my god, so freaking cool. So freaking cool.
That is amazing. I would have thought that was a much newer thing, to be honest,
I know, right?
than
1931.
1930. Wow. I'm
1931.
impressed.
I'm so impressed. And then the final thing that's really interesting is that they used silence.
Mhm.
So even in the silent film era, films weren't silent because, again, you always had a musical accompaniment. You always had someone playing along with the film. So this film has no musical score, it only has diegetic sound. We explained diegetic versus non-diegetic on the podcast before, but maybe you missed that episode. Diegetic sound, it's sound that exists within the world of the narrative. And then
Mhm.
non-diegetic sound is music that comes from outside of that film. So, for example, one of my favorite lines of all time from the behind the scenes of Lord of the Rings, Elijah Wood turned to the lighting director and was like, "These are like massive lights, and it's a nighttime scene. Where are these lights coming from? Where in the world are the lights coming from?" And then the lighting designer looked at him and said, "The same place the music's coming from." So there is a place outside the narrative where lighting and
Yeah.
music can come from.
Yeah. Wow. Can I connect this back to our very first episode?
Yeah, go for it. Let's hear about Harper Marx.
So his brother Chico, he was a very good pianist. And one of his first jobs as a kid, he's like early teens, is playing the piano in a silent movie theater. And he
Cool.
was a very accomplished pianist that could play a lot of songs to fit the mood of the scene that was playing.
Yeah.
However, he would rather be out gambling. He gets paid like 10 cents. So he says, I'll pay you, Harper, I'll pay you 5 cents to come play instead of me. They were basically identical. Nobody could tell them apart anyway. They were brothers, very similar, looked very similar. So the only issue was that Harpo only knew one song on the piano because Chico was a very good
Oh
pianist. Harpo was not. But what he could do was he could play that song like in different variations. Like he could play very slowly on the lower registers to
Yeah,
make it look dramatic, or he could play very fast for a chase scene, played like a waltz, played like romantic styles, but it was always the same song.
that's
And
hilarious.
nobody complained. And that was how Harpo got his start in showbiz, was as a one song silent movie pianist.
I mean, that's a really hilarious gig. I love that. That's so good. And the final thing that the use of sound and synchronized sound allowed to have happen in this film that hadn't happened before was the concept of a leitmotif. Have you heard this word before? Is this a word that you know but don't know?
You introduced me to it and I completely forgot. So give me the scoop.
Give me the scoop. So, a leitmotif is actually a word from musical theory.
Mhm.
It basically means a small repeating phrase. So, my favorite leitmotif is da dum da dum 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 dum. Like you instantly know what the fuck I'm referencing, right? So,
Yes.
this is the first time a leitmotif was used in cinema. In this film, to represent the killer's like deranged, insane desire slash compulsion to kill small children, he whistles Hall of the Mountain King. And we hear it and we see his shadow before we see his face. Like we actually see the back of him and it's only his silhouette for like the first
Ah,
40 minutes of the film. But whenever we hear this song, we know shit's about to go down. And it actually
wow.
becomes super important in the narrative because, again, it's all diegetic sound. The way that they eventually manage to find the killer is because a blind man recognizes the song. So the man who no one
Ah.
thought would be able to do anything, the blind guy, he's like, it's that motherfucker. That guy there, he's the killer because he won't stop whistling this stupid song.
Wow. How does that song go?
Dum 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 dum
Ah.
dum. I can't whistle for shit though.
Okay, that's the one. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know that's like a classical
Yes,
piece, right?
it is.
Yeah, by somebody. Assume
By for Grieg?
Grieg. Yeah, Grieg.
Edvard
Yeah,
Grieg. He's Norwegian.
Grieg.
I learned that
Norwegian
thingy.
composer. Grieg. Grieg.
Yes.
Grieg. Grieg.
Yeah,
That's probably more
you're the
Swedish.
Scandi person here. You should be able to translate that better than me.
Yeah, awesome, cool. And of course, that has Jaws and a million other
hmm
examples of using that later on. Yeah, wow, he invented that.
He did. Fritz Lang, honestly, MVP.
So cool, so cool.
So that's the sound. The sound design in this film is incredible and groundbreaking and innovative. And like when you watch it, it doesn't feel cool because you're like, yeah, of course we do that. Of course we do that. And then you have to remind yourself, oh shit, this is like the first time they did that. And then it just
Yeah,
gets infinitely cooler.
awesome.
So, number two, it's the camera and the lighting. So, this is again pulling from that German expressionism. You don't see the killer for so long and you just see shadows.
Mhm.
And you also have these beautiful shots of really long diagonal crossing streets and these stairwells. And it opens with a shot of a little girl playing with her friends. And she's singing the song about how they're all going to die. It's really cute. But it's like a little girl in the middle surrounded by her friends. And that shot is like shot from above and it has this really intense feeling. And then it's mirrored later in the film when the killer is finally caught when he is surrounded by thugs. And it's again one person in the middle, surrounded by people from this high angle shot. The use of imagery to
Ah,
bookend this film is really intense and it's very
wow.
visually beautiful and terrifying. This is a thriller. This is not a squishy marshmallow film.
No. Wow.
Moving camera shots were kind of a thing in this time period, but the way Fritz Lang used it in this particular production feels really creepy. It feels really awful in this really jarring, unnerving way. The camera follows people. It doesn't just sit there or do a beautiful sweeping shot of the scenery. It stalks you. It stalks the
Mhm.
killer. It stalks the children. The way the camera is pulling in on people. There are shots that it's obscured, it's hiding and filming through bushes or through greenery or through like windows or reflections that feel like you're what's the word? You're the voyeur. Yes, that's the word.
Yeah.
It's a very voyeuristic camera movement. You feel creepy watching this film because you feel like you're stalking and you're watching through the bushes and you're checking out things through reflections. The camera itself is almost a character in the film for how much personality it has almost. It's so weird. The way the camera moves through space is disgustingly creepy and it's great.
Wow. And then that, of course, has been used in like a million slasher films.
Right?
And it's actually a critique of those movies is that it puts you behind the eyes of the killer, whoever that is in those
Yeah.
movies, right? And then you get to be the voyeur and you get to, spy on the beautiful young woman in the shower or whatever.
Mm.
but you get put in the shoes of not the victim, you get put in the shoes of the assassin, the killer, the stalker.
So this is one of the first instances that happened. And in this particular film, there are moments where you're stalking a child and then the camera whips back and you realized the killer hadn't come with you. You are not the killer. The killer's still hiding in the corner. That was just you. You
Hmm.
you by yourself was just watching that child. And it's like, "Oh, thanks. Thanks, camera. Thanks for that. That's nice."
Ah, that is unsettling. And of course, to again highlight the innovative nature of this, right? Because we're used to this. We've seen this a million times. I keep wondering what the hell that did to audiences the first time they saw something like that.
I mean, today it's loved. Today it's like
Hmm.
seen as one of the greatest films of all time. It's got like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Hang on, I just pulled up this quote. So this is a quote from Graham Greene, who was an English writer and journalist at the time.
Graham Greene says, looking through the eyepiece of a microscope through which the tangled mind is exposed, laid flat on the slide, love and lust, nobility and perversity, hatred of itself and despair jumping at you from the jelly. Love and lust, nobility and perversity, hatred of itself and despair jumping at you. Wow.
This,
Jelly could be like from the celluloid.
oh, potentially.
Could be. I don't know.
Potentially.
Yeah.
But I think this speaks a lot to Peter Lorre's performance, which let's jump to that. Let's jump to that
Hmm.
now. So Peter Lorre plays Hans Beckert, who is a child murderer. We don't actually hear his voice until like more than halfway through the film, I think. He doesn't really speak very much. But then there's this really famous scene called the Kangaroo Court, where
Hmm.
after he's finally caught, he gets taken to the criminal underworld, where
Ah.
the people, the mob, put him on trial.
Hmm.
And they basically just want to kill him. They just want to murder him. But he gives a very impassioned defense and tries to explain why he has no control over his actions and that he is innocent because he has no memory of it. It's an illness, it's a voice screaming at him the whole time to do it. And Peter Lorre's performance here is so good, you almost feel bad for the guy. So I'm going to send you a clip. This is a
Mhm.
clip from the scene from the Kangaroo Court where Peter Lorre first makes his impassioned plea.
Aber ich kann doch nichts dafür! Ich kann doch nichts dafür!
That is fucking fascinating. A couple of things. He has a weird German accent. It's not German, can't tell what it is, but his German is great.
Mm,
What aspect ratio is this? Is this like 1-to-1 or it's like completely square?
that is a great question. I don't know.
Is that what movies were in back then?
Also, just as a heads up, Googling stuff when the word is just M.
M, yeah, no.
Oh, yay. The aspect ratio for M, according to IMDb, is 1.20 to 1.
Okay, so nearly a
Mm,
perfect square.
nearly a perfect square.
Wow. Okay. So here's what I noticed about it. First of all, everything you said, the gorgeous camera
Mhm.
angles, and we're looking down at him.
Yeah.
When we see him, we're looking down, and then the audience is framed in such a beautiful way. That was amazing. His performance is fantastic.
Mm,
His anguished yell at the beginning, "Ich kann nicht dafür," I can't help it, I thought was great. His performance is a little bit over the top. I can see how silent movies were just a few years earlier,
yeah.
and some of that over the top acting is still there. He emotes a lot more than you would in a modern movie,
Yeah.
but absolutely believable. All the stuff that goes on in his face while he's speaking and while he's not speaking, that was beautiful. That was a fantastic performance. That was amazing. I'm watching this thing. That's amazing.
Also, it's on YouTube, so it's easy to watch. So, what happens in the film is this is the kangaroo court with the criminal
Uh-huh.
overlords. Then they get busted and raided by the police, and the police take him off to a real trial. And then, in the middle of the trial, the film ends and fades to black.
No way.
Because fuck you is why. So it ends really ambiguously, and it ends with this question and almost like this moment of poignancy for the audience to consider. What would you do?
Mm-hmm.
Would you kill this guy, which is what the mob wants to do? Would you keep him alive? Would you lock him up? What is the correct course of action for this person? This
Mm-hmm.
is what the kangaroo court looked like. The guy pointing at the camera, he's the main guy in charge. Can you describe what he looks like to you, bearing in mind this is 1931 Germany?
The black leather coat has a certain SS Gestapo
Yep,
vibe to it. That's what
yep,
I'm getting.
yep.
Oh yeah, the cane and the black gloves. Yeah.
A lot of these extras in the background who play the criminal court, Fritz Lang
Mm-hmm.
fully just hired criminals. Because he felt like they would have a better, more authentic, menacing vibe. So a lot of the people in this scene are actually just straight up criminals.
Method acting. He invented method acting. There you go.
So this film was made in 1931. The Nazis are in power at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Both Fritz Lang and Peter Lorre are of Jewish descent.
Oh, not good.
So Fritz Lang's mother is Jewish, despite the fact that he was raised practicing Catholicism, and Peter Lorre is just straight up Jewish. With that context, and knowing that these are the people who wrote and performed this, and bear in mind that the Kangaroo Court are a mob of people all calling for the death of one person, believing
Mm-hmm.
that that one person is the cause of all of the ills in their society.
Yeah.
That, with the context of Nazism, hits different.
Oh yeah, that's very on the nose. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And I cannot imagine that the Nazis particularly like this movie at all. It's not probably not their thing.
Oh, Fritz Lang fucking with the Nazi party is like a whole. We're gonna get to that. That shit's hilarious.
Wow. Wow. I have a by the way, do you know why it's called a kangaroo court?
Ooh, no, I don't know why it's called a kangaroo court.
Okay, nobody knows. So I looked it up on Merriam-Webster just now.
You fucker.
Here's what it says on Merriam-Webster. Various theories abound. It has been suggested that kangaroo courts got their name because they were initially marked by rapid and unpredictable movement from one place to another, or that they were in some way associated with jumping, i.e., illegally occupying mining claims. These hypotheses are all unsubstantiated. However, what is known is that the first kangaroo courts originated in the United States at approximately the time of the 1849 California gold rush, and the word saw its earliest use in the southwestern U.S. It first turned up in print in 1853 in a book about Texas, not a place with a lot of kangaroos.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So nobody knows. It's a great name,
Weird.
but nobody knows why we call it the kangaroo courts.
Yeah. I'm very curious. When you do watch the film, I would
Mhm.
love to have afterwards a little debrief and ask you, do you think we should kill Hans Beckert? Do you think he should live? Like, I would love for you to have a moment to question yourself and your morality and like report back if
Yeah,
you will.
yeah, yeah. We'll follow up on that in the next episode.
Yeah.
I'm watching this very soon. I'm very, very curious.
Edgy teenage Katie was like, kill the fucker. Modern day Katie has slightly more nuanced views. But as a teenager, when I watched this film, I was like, yeah, fuck that dude, murder him.
Oh yeah. That's there's a debate there.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
A little bit, just a little
Um,
bit.
So you brought up the Nazis not liking Mr. Fritz Lang. And
Hmm.
I want to finish this episode by talking about how Fritz Lang fucked with the Nazis because he could. I'm also going to tell you the story that he tells. I have checked the timeline of it. It doesn't seem like it's true. I don't care. It's a good fucking story. I'm telling it anyways. So, at the end of 1932, Fritz Lang started working on his next film. This is called The Testament of Dr. Mabuse. It is a sequel to an earlier film he made, which was a silent film about Dr. Mabuse. This is now the sequel. It's in sound. Oh my god, so exciting. I figured out how to make sound films really cool. Also, some really fucking creepy special effects. Actually, no, I'm gonna have to show you Dr. Mabuse now because oh my god, he is so creepy in this film.
Okay, that is this is one of the Muppets. That's Waldorf or Statler,
I know,
one of the two
right?
old guys in the
I think that's
balcony
where they got it.
as a creepy ghost.
They didn't really have CGI at the time, so this is all like practical effects. Anyways, so this film is coming out. With all films made in Germany at the time, it had to go through the censorship office and had to basically make it past Joseph Goebbels. Goebbels?
Hmm.
Goebbels. Joseph Goebbels.
Goebbels. Yeah.
Goebbels. And predictably, they didn't like this film very much because Dr. Mabuse is like the bad guy. He is the criminal. He's not good news. The script fully put Nazi slogans into his mouth. So there is a moment in this film where weird, creepy, ghostly Dr. Mabuse spouts Nazi slogans at the audience, and everyone's supposed to hate him. He's the bad guy, and he's touting some Nazi bullshit,
Awesome.
which is so cool. The film, I don't think ever actually came out in Germany because the censors were like, dude, what the fuck? So the new regime banned it because it was an incitement to public disorder.
Mhm.
And yeah, Goebbels hated this film. And he said, and you will quote,
Film showed that an extremely dedicated group of people are perfectly capable of overthrowing any state with violence. He says that like it's a bad thing.
I know, right? So, unimaginably, for some strange reason, this film didn't quite make it to the public in Germany
And
at the time.
so weird. So weird.
But this is a story that Fritz Lang tells. True, false, I don't care. He was summoned to Goebbels' office after the film kind of did not quite make it through censorship and had a meeting in which Goebbels was like, hey, dude, this film was not cool. You cannot have this film. But clearly, you're quite good at this whole filmmaking thing. Have you considered joining us and becoming the father of German cinema? Come be part of the propaganda machine. And Fritz Lang turned to Goebbels and was like, my mother is Jewish. Can you imagine turning to one of the main people of the Nazi party and saying, yo, you should kill me? Like, what the, like, oh my God, the balls on Fritz Lang. Absolutely massive. What is this man? And Goebbels turned to him and said, we decide who is Aryan and who isn't.
Yeah.
Basically saying, if you help us and you become part of the party, you're safe. You're cool. No harm, no foul. German mom, who? You were raised Catholic. And in that moment, Fritz Lang was like, yeah, I need to get out of Germany. Like, I need to go.
Yeah.
The meeting continues for a little bit, and the entire time, Lang is in his head being like, okay, I have this much in cash. I have this thing I can sell. My wife has jewelry I can sell. I need to get gone. So the second he's allowed to leave the office, it was like, we'll call you. We'll talk tomorrow. This is happening. Because of course he agreed. Of course he was like, yeah, sure, I'll do the thing. Yep, 100%. Definitely going to do that with you. He goes home. He gets one of his servants to rush out and buy a train ticket. He gets whatever cash he has in the house quickly. He goes to visit his wife, who, by the way, is part of the Nazi party. She gives him some jewelry. He gets on a train to Paris and is on the way to the train station, passes like a massive group of yellow shirts, and it's like, oh shit, this is how I die. This is how I die. It's too late. They've caught me. But luckily, they were just like getting ready for patrol, and they weren't there for him, but he was so convinced they were. So he's now got cash, jewels, and a shit ton of anxiety. He gets on the train. He hides a lot of the cash in books inside of his carriage. He hides the jewels in the bathroom over in the empty carriage next to him. He's so terrified of being caught. And then this is the part where no one believes the story anymore. I mean, the whole story is a bit far-fetched anyways, but this part is really far-fetched. The train gets stopped in Brussels, and the Nazi party board and the soldiers are searching every single carriage. And he's lying there like, this is how I die. Cool. And in that moment, he really quickly thinks like, what did I tell my actors? I told them to be the thing, not just to do the thing, but to be the thing. And so he turns off all the lights, crashes under bed, and starts snoring as loudly as he can. So instead of like slamming on the door and ripping the door open and ripping him out of bed, The soldiers move past and keep walking and don't check his carriage.
Wow.
So he sneaks away to Paris. He gets out of Germany. He continues making films both in the rest of Europe and in the States, and
Wow.
continues to fuck with the Nazis by surviving and making badass cinema.
Wow. That is amazing. What an escape.
What a dude. And I think this is made all the better when I finally show you what he looks like.
Before I look at the picture, well done. In M, we only see the murderer after 40 minutes. And in this podcast episode, we only see the main guy after 40 minutes. Nice use of foreshadowing there. Whoa! Eye patch and everything.
I know.
Very stylish hat and a trench coat. Yeah, wow, that's somebody's grandpa, right?
Yeah. He is such a strange dude. Also, he who has an eye patch. Come on, Lang. Could you just be more badass looking? Seriously.
Probably not. Probably.
How is this man real, is my question.
Yeah.
So, not only did Fritz Lang create a lot of the things that we see in classic cinema, innovate on how sound is used to bridge stories and to make a narrative feel cohesive and terrifying. Start Peter Lorre's career, which had questionable moments. Yellowface is not cool, don't do that. And also have a magnum opus of a film like M, considered one of the greatest films of all time. That motherfucker trolled the Nazis and snuck out of Germany. This man is so cool. His art is so cool, and I'm so glad we have it. Alex, what do you think of M?
I am thoroughly intrigued. I can't wait to watch it. I'm excited to watch it for the movie itself, for the performances, but also for those little moments of, oh, so there's where that director got that idea from.
Yeah.
All the little tricks that come up in later movies.
Yeah.
Also, my world is a little richer for knowing about him as a human being and what he got up to. And his courage in standing up to the Nazis. Anybody who fucks with Nazis is golden in my book. What an amazing man. What an amazing work. His later work, is that as innovative, as good? Or
I mean, his stuff is generally kind of awesome. I think my personal favorite, and I think also the most accessible one, is M. He also did You Only Live Once, which is like a very classic Hollywood film. He did other like classic Hollywood stuff later in life, but I think the true like glory of his work is M, and also Metropolis, but mostly M.
Yeah. Metropolis is earlier, right? That's a silent movie, right?
That's a silent movie.
Yeah. Sci-fi.
Yeah, very creepy. It's fabulous. Everything is fabulous.
Katie, that sounds amazing. If somebody wanted to know more about M, where should they go?
In the doobly-doo, I've got some cool articles and stuff about information about Fritz Lang, the story about how he trolled the Nazis, some videos on the importance of sound design and how sound design was used in the film, including the film as well. But my favorite thing that I have in the doobly-doo is an interview with Fritz Lang from 1975, where you can hear the man speak for himself. So I highly recommend. It's quite long, and he speaks very dramatically, and I think that's why it's quite long. But it's well worth like having a look through and like just to see his persona, his attitude. He is a very intense human, and it's kind of awesome. So check that out. But also just watch M. It is super accessible as far as weird black and white German expressionism cinema goes, and it's genuinely a really awesome film. So go check it out. It's for free on YouTube.
And also, once you've seen it, you can say, I've seen some German expressionist movies. Yeah.
You can be that dickhead.
Yeah, you can be that person.
Oh, I'm like the ultimate dickhead in university. My then partner, as my birthday present, took me to see The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari in a church hall with an organist playing. And that was considered the coolest birthday present I could have had at the time. And I was very psyched. But also, I am that dickhead.
Yes. And we appreciate you sharing your dickheadedness with all of us.
So, dear listener, what did you think about 1931's M? Do you have any questions, or did we leave out something awesome about Fritz Lang? Go to our website or Instagram at Electric Enthusiasm and leave a comment.
We have a great comment from a previous episode. Somebody who commented on our Instagram. I'm just wondering how to pronounce the username.
This is why I made you do it.
It's Java, GHHH. So I'm Java. If I'm pronouncing that wrong, Java, I apologize. Here's the comment. Great comment. Found your podcast through this episode and love the energy and banter the two of you have. Oh, thank you. As someone that's way too excited about a bunch of unrelated topics, I wholeheartedly see myself in this podcast. Welcome to the club. I wanted to suggest Kate Bush as a topic for a future pod, and not just because of her recent resurgence in popularity, but because of how much of a groundbreaking and truly original artist she is. Her impact continues to reverberate in many aspects of music even till this day. Fun fact, she's widely credited with being the first artist to use a wireless microphone. Wow. To perform live, as she wanted to be able to dance freely during her performances well before Madonna and others. Okay, that does it. Kate Bush goes on the list. Kate Bush episode coming up very soon. I have listened to Kate Bush since the 80s back then. So yeah, no, we're doing it.
I'm so glad you said that. I only know Kate Bush from the modern resurgence of her from Stranger Things / Reels. So grateful that you know who she is. Yay!
Yes, exactly. I'll research up a storm on Kate Bush, and she's coming to this podcast very soon. Thank you, Java. I don't know.
Thank you very much for commenting on our Instagram. Please keep it up. We love getting episode suggestions from you guys, and we also love hearing about how great we are. That's also very fun for us.
Always. Katie, if somebody liked this episode on black and white, dark, child murdering, expressionist German cinema, what other episode of ours do you think they should listen to? Watch.
I mean, you did bring up Harpo Marx earlier. I feel like that's a great place to go. It's very of the era. If you like this era of history, we definitely have quite a few historical episodes of the podcast, actually.
Yeah, Joe Bake.
A Joe Bake would be great. A little bit of Billy Strayhorn would be great.
Yeah, that whole time.
Yeah. My love of this era clearly started a long time before I noticed it.
Yeah, no, that was a cool era. In some ways. Not in all ways. In some ways.
The amount of blackface and yellowface I encountered researching this. Oof. I forgot how bad it was.
Yeah. Wow. And of course, our previous episode, Gutsy, also an example of a visually stunning movie that became groundbreaking in a completely different way, but has still been referenced by many, many other filmmakers since then. Yeah. The film by Godfrey Reggio, Koyaanisqatsi, that episode might also tickle you if you liked this one.
Yes. I think I might do a future episode about Tim Burton or Henry Selznick, two directors who were highly influenced by German expressionism cinema, and a lot of the character designs in Henry Selznick's and Tim Burton's animations, particularly the stop motion animations, does come from German expressionism. Have you seen Corpse Bride by Tim Burton?
I have not.
There is a little worm caterpillar character who is very clearly modeled off Pete Lorre in the kangaroo court scene. Like his facial structure is very clearly, he's got the same kind of intense bulging eyes. I mean that in a very lovely way, Pete. I'm so sorry. But yeah, like it's really clearly like a direct reference to that. And so I might do an episode about that going forward. If we're going to continue with like digging into cinema buff Katie vibes.
Much as I'd love to, this channel is now an Indian action movie appreciation channel.
That's true. I forgot. Kate Bush needs to go on hold. We hope you enjoyed sharing some of our enthusiasms in this episode. Please visit our website at Electric Enthusiasm or visit us on Instagram at Electric Enthusiasm. How many times do we say Electric Enthusiasm? Oh my goodness. To discover more episodes or to leave a comment.
And now, dear listener, it's your turn to go fuck with some Nazis.
Yes, I knew it was going to be that. I'm so glad it was. Why the hell are Nazis back? What?
There are too many Nazis in this world are currently going unfucked with, and we can't have that.
It's not okay. Also, don't do blackface or yellowface, team. Just don't do it. Just don't. Stop it.
Stop it. Any kind of face. Yeah.